Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today I'm bringing you Spellbinders Large Die of the Month, September 2024, Picture Perfect Autumn. There's quite a few dies in this set and it can be a little bit daunting if you don't break it down. And remember, you don't have to use all the dies in one card. However, I do show you for my first card how I use all the dies to create one picture perfect autumn card front. And then I proceed to show you how you can use parts of the cards or parts of the dice to create some amazing cards. I do like the trees. The trees are my favorite part of this die because you can really change the colors and create some amazing cards. And you know, in autumn, the color of the trees that you can see in nature can really be quite colorful and quite inspirational in creating these amazing trees. I do go a bit to town in my latter cards. I don't show you the assembly of all the cards, if not the video will be too long, but you'll get the gist on how to assemble the dies to create a picture perfect autumn card, and then you can assemble elements of it to make various cards. For this first card here, I'm using quite a bit of colored card, which I've got loads of, and I'm just going to show you the initial assembly of the trees and the little shed as well, or house. I think of it as shed, but it can be a house as well. The shed or house can be various colors if you want, but I'm going to stick to some autumnal colors. When it comes to thin die cuts, you've got to put dots of liquid glue and smudge it onto a scrap paper so that it doesn't smudge when you put it onto the die itself. So the same with these little doors. But here what I do is rather than put it onto the shed immediately, I put it onto some grey card to give the doors some colour. I do a couple of variations. You don't have to do this bit, but I decided to do it because I want to give the doors and the window a different colour. So I just attach the die cut onto coloured card and just cut around it, and there you go. You've got a background for the door and the window. It's also easier to attach it onto the shed or home, whichever you're calling it. I really think once you understand how to assemble each component of this picture perfect autumn die set, you'll have fun using it, because this little shed or home, you can even use it on its own to say welcome to your new home or congratulations on your new home. So it's quite versatile that way. And then you can use this beautiful sunflower and the leaves just to create an entire card with it. Easy to assemble, easy enough to assemble this little sunflower here. And then you've got a little stem here. You can cut this into two and use it as a stem for each of the sunflowers. So you can do both together. So it's quite ingenious actually how they've created this die where you die cut one and you've got two. This is the sentiment that comes with it. Many thanks. So you use the two parts of those dies to create that little banner sentiment. And here you've got the pumpkin. The stem of the pumpkin has been created separately, so you can just put the pumpkin in threes. Now you can use different colors for the pumpkins, and I do that in my later cards, but here I use the same color for all three pumpkins because pumpkins don't come in same colors. They get variations of orange, yellows and burgundies, or darker orange, darker red. So you can put various colors in it and create this trio of pumpkin die. Very pretty. I like that. It's very cute, and I tend to use it at the base of most of the trees when I'm assembling the entire bed. And here you've got the fences that will frame the pathway that you can create with these two dies. So I place the dies by measuring it against the corner of the card, put the fence there, and then I tape it onto the card. So it's a little bit of imagination you need to do to get this pathway, if you like. It doesn't have to be the way I'm doing it. You can just make a narrow pathway, and it doesn't have to be perfectly framed by the fence. It's quite versatile here, but here I'm showing you how I think it's meant to be used. So I cut this and I put it onto the card itself. Now they've also given you two dies here to create the landscape. So I'm going to use white card here, and yes, I'm going to do some ink blending with this. I have just used all colored card, but for the background, I'm going to do some ink blending by die cutting the landscape curves onto white card. So I've got three elements here. First, for the card base, which is the A6 card there that I have, I'm going to be using that to do the sky. And then the other two, I will be doing landscapes, which is going to be various shades of green. You've also got the semicircle, which is going to be used for the sun. And then you've got a cloud die. I'm going to use some distress inks, and I'm just sticking to tumble glass, a light blue, to create the sky element. I will also put die cuts of the clouds on it later on. So I put enough of a sky before I start using various shades of green distress inks to create the landscape. I really hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. I place the die cut onto a sticky mat, which is on my stamp wheel, to add the ink or apply the ink onto those die cuts. I just find that easier. I do lots of Spellbinders club kits every month, and I tend to put them into a playlist. So I will be creating a playlist of all the videos that I've created for this month's Spellbinders club kits. And in fact, I'm also going to probably put an additional videos into the playlist, which I haven't had a chance to put individually because due to time constraints, it's coming to the end of the month and I'm running late. So do check out my playlist where you can see all the Spellbinders September 2024 club kits that I've demonstrated and done videos on. And because there are so many club kits and so many possibilities, I do get carried away in doing my videos, and I still could do more, but I need to stop at some point. I do hope you find all the videos inspirational and gives you the impetus to create some amazing cards and projects when you get your club kits. Do check it out. I am inspired by the Spellbinders club kits, but they do issue them or they do release them in themed, and therefore you can use all the club kits together to create a card or a project. So I do store my Spellbinders club kits by month as well because it's really easy to use it that way. And if it's sentiment heavy, I do keep it separately so I get to use it more frequently, so it's nearer to where I'm crafting and I can reach out and use those sentiments. Here I'm placing some scrap cards behind the landscape so that it's quite flat when I place it onto the base card. And there I've created the sky as well as the landscape to start populating or placing all the various die cuts into the composition. So before I place the landscape, I decided to use some darker blue ink to create a little bit of a variation in the sky color just above that landscape. So it provides a little bit of interest and a little bit of variation to the sky color because it all kind of lightened as it dry. A lot of these inks do lighten as they dry, so you do want to leave them and see how the colors develop, if you like, until you want to place them onto the card. Here I'm just placing that semicircle die cut as a sun that kind of just peeps over that landscape, and I'm going to start the assembly of the pathway. A bit tricky, the pathway. You want to put the pathway down and then you put the fences in, but you want the fence to slightly overlap onto the front of that home or shed. So you just need to be a little bit careful when you put it in. I mean, obviously this is what I'm doing now. You'll see in the next card I use my fence differently. So it's really up to you whether you want to use them. You can even do one without the fence as well. It's your composition, your assembly, so you can be flexible of how you want to place them and whether you want to use all of the die cuts in the die set. For the next set of die cuts, I decided to use my Lindy's Gang magical powders to create the colored card, if you like, to do all the die cuts. So I do use gloves because it does stain. It does come out after a couple of days, but I've got to go out, so I'm not going to stain my fingers like I did the last time I used these. So I'm using some gloves to protect my fingers, and I'm going to go to town using watercolor paper, spray some water onto it, and I use a fan brush to sprinkle the beautiful powdered pigments onto the watercolor paper to create some amazing colored paper with variations of the colors. And it's so pretty when I do the die cuts, and I think it's perfect for die cutting this kind of a die set. So I do lots of them. And the thing about these magical powders is every time you do it, you don't get the same spread of color. It can be different depending on the amount of water you put, amount of powder you put. The powders are quite precious, so I don't waste them. So every time there is color that goes onto my glass mat, I do pick it up with another watercolor paper. Even if I don't use all of the watercolor paper or all of the pigmented paper for this die set, I can always keep it for another composition, another die cut. The colors in the little containers don't really represent the color that's actually going to turn out, but the colors on the covers pretty much can see what color you can expect from the magical powders. These are the flat ones, so there's not much of a shine. There are some of the magical powders that will give you a shine, and I use a few of them. And I'll put all of the colors that I use from these Lindy's Gang magical powders in the description below. I just think this is a great way to create interesting colored card to do your die cutting. So I carry on and do a whole load of these colors on watercolor paper. I will not use all of them for this card or this die set, so I know I'll have balance that I can use in future projects, future cards. So do see how I continue to create this colored card. And the thing is, I do dry them in between. I use my heat tool and dry these paper. So if I'm not happy with what the dried outcome is, I can always still add more powder or pick up the color from the glass bed, or you could add additional powder, or you could put a different colored powder, so you can mix the colored powders as well. I don't quite do that this time around, but that's something I'll do probably when I do flowers or something next time. But here I do end up making loads of it, and I do keep them. So do carry on watching, and then you will see how I will die cut all of them and see what the outcomes are. Here are all the colored paper created with Lindy's Gang magical powders that I created. And then I've created all these die cuts. Took me a little while. Went a bit nuts really doing all of these die cuts. Got carried away. But I also have got some of the cards that I've used the Lindy's Gang for the background. For example, here I've done the landscape cut here for the background of my first card. And I've got the sky as well with the Lindy's Gang powders for the blue sky. So I'm just cutting this slightly smaller so I can use it for the dual bits of the landscape that I need. And I attach it onto the card per usual. Again, while I'm attaching this to the card, before that I add a little bit of extra green with my peel paint distress ink, just to add a little bit more of a shadow. I don't use all elements of the die set here. For example, I don't use the pathway or the sun, but you don't have to use all components of it. You just can put as many as you want. And you'll see in the later cards that I'll show you the completed cards in the end, I just use the trees. I also introduce using the Glimmer of the Month, which is thanks sentiments, and I use that directly onto the card with the card base. You'll see how I create it. So just sit back and enjoy the rest of the video, and I'll get back to you later. This sentiment that comes to the die set, this time I don't use the banner die, so I'm not die cutting it out. I'm putting the sentiment directly onto that piece that's going to go on the card front. Now I'm doing this here now. Later on when I start putting the card together, I'm not really keen on it. I die cut a different sentiment, and then I'm not keen with that, and I die cut another sentiment. So you'll see me keep changing the sentiment color on this card. But at the end of the day, you got to really make sure you like it when it all comes together and see how it goes. So here I'm using the fence differently from earlier. I'm just putting it behind the house rather than on the sides of the pathway, the fence framing the pathway. You can do it any way you want. So I just attach the house again with some dimensional tape. I'm using 1mm dimensional tape. I know it's not really much, but I just like that slight elevation from the card front, and even for the tree, because the base is different with the house there. So I'm using some foam squares as well to get all of the elements of the card together onto the card front. This is the Glimmer of the month, September 2024, Friendly Thanks. It's full of sentiments that conveys thankfulness and thank you to someone. So I'm using the sentiment here to do the hot foiling directly onto the card front, which I have already done some ink blending. It says, all I can say is thanks. So you can see the thanks on the left there. So it comes with a die cut as well. But I decided not to die cut the thanks. I'm going to be hot foiling the thanks directly onto the card panel that I've ink blended already. And per usual, this is a smooth card that I've done my ink blending on. So I've done my ink blending on a smooth card, and I did directly on the card front. Now, probably not the best idea. I should have done it onto a card panel, but you'll see how I rectify this situation. Again, I'm using my foil press machine at a medium setting, about 24 seconds, and then I'm putting it through the Gemini Junior embossing die cutting machine. And if you can see, the image goes through the whole card. So I do end up cutting that card panel and then putting it onto a fresh card base, so it doesn't have that impression or image in the inside of the card. I'm using the polished brass hot foil, and this is my surefire hot foil that I know I always get brilliant results the first time. I don't know why. Each of the pigments have got slightly different timing, but I know with polished brass I'm always going to get excellent results. So I can just put my die cuts in the middle of the card. I'm attaching it onto the card front now and put it slightly smaller. You get a very, very thin border around this A6 card, which measures 14.8 centimeters by 10.5 centimeters. And here I'm putting very few of the die cuts. I'm just using the house, the tree, and the pumpkins. I love the simplicity of this card. Here are all the cards that I've created. Here is the card that I use all the elements of the die cut. Here I use slightly less elements of the die cut, and here I use very few elements of the die cut, but I added the glimmer or the hot foiling directly onto the card front, which I really love the look of it. And here are the cards that I just used some glimmer, hot foiling. I die cut the thanks, and I used the trees. I liked using the trees in these simple thank you cards, and I also like the sentiments that came with the glimmer of the month. You've got all I can say is thanks. This card is full of thanks. Thanks for lending a hand. Thanks for having a big heart. And thanks for being a friend. Lovely sentiments. And I've got a great set of thank you cards from all of the cards that I've created from this month's Spellbinders Club Kits. Here are close-up pictures of all the cards. And I really hope you've been inspired and will be taking that Spellbinders Club Kits when you get it delivered and start creating. All the products I've used are listed in the description below, so do check it out. I really hope you enjoy using these Spellbinders Club Kits, and do look out for my playlist that will have all of the Spellbinders Club Kits from September 2024 released shortly. Thank you so much for stopping by. Happy crafting, and I hope to catch you at my next video. Do take care. Enjoy.